Master Duel's solo mode is broken, and I know how to fix it. Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Now, as you might have noticed, things are a little different. I'm moving this week, and thus don't have the time or resources to script, record, and edit a whole explained video. So I decided to do a bit more of a low editing, ranty-esque kind of thing to talk about something that's been on my mind recently. Thankfully, it's not directly connected to the stuff being talked about in the Yugi sphere right now, though it is kind of related to the accessibility of the game. Master Duel, I had hoped, and a lot of people had hoped, would be a great entry point to the game. I mean, you could put as much resources as you want into figuring out interesting ways to teach the game, figure out how to detangle the complicated game states that Yu-Gi-Oh! Finds itself in nowadays. And unfortunately, a lot of the teaching tools just end up being what I wrote online is just the starter deck manual slideshow. So instead of just letting bygones be bygones, I thought, what if I put down my ideas for what would make solo mode a better experience? I've got some notes right here. Let's talk about the first one, which is to make the solo modes more relevant. This is one that's definitely not a unique idea. I've seen this floated around, and it makes a lot of sense. The Ally of Justice solo mode has been getting a lot of flack recently, and I would agree for good reason. Ally of Justice hasn't been relevant since, I don't know, we needed counters for Blue Eyes and we ran Cycle Reader as a hand trap. Catastor was a huge part of the game's history, no doubt about it, but has otherwise been a crushingly terrible archetype, and it sucks that they decided to spend their resources making a solo mode for that. And I feel bad about saying that because Ally of Justice is very relevant in Duel Terminal lore. It's part of Age 1.0. It's the culmination of the group coming together of 4 separate tribes, the Mist Valley, X-Sabers, Lavals, and Ice Barriers, all of them putting aside their differences for just a second to share their technologies and fight against the worms. That's really cool, and sadly, as far as I can tell, that solo mode does not really hammer that point in, and that really sucks. So it's not relevant in a sharing the lore kind of way, and it's certainly not relative competitively, so why did they do that? Baffles the mind. Here's hoping that maybe there's an Ally of Justice retrain in the works, maybe a core booster set is on its way that'll recontextualize Ally of Justice like the so many ways that Gen X ended up being, but for now, it just kind of languishes in the solo mode. Now, how can we fix that? Of course, we make them more relevant. It's not like they're even going to run counter to what their normal strategy is for promoting cards. Just recently, we had the Fiend and Fairy Festival, which was obviously a way to push the new Labyrinth cards. A very Fiend-focused deck, obviously, but just calling it the Fiend Festival might have been a bit too on the nose, so they added the Fairy part in there to kind of balance things out and make it a little more goofy for people who wanted to try to play Fright Furs, like me. And it's not like Labyrinth itself doesn't have any lore. There's some snippets in the valuable books about what's going on in the Labyrinth, and that seems to be what their strategy is for more lore-intensive solo modes. They just grab the info from the valuable books, put it on a, decently put-together series of slides, and they ship it out. They give you a number of scenarios in which you can play it, and you could show off a number of things, like the you could show off IKEA Labyrinth, one that focuses more on the monsters to utilize their power to enable the traps. Maybe you allow the player to play an Unchained version, which is becoming very popular. There's a lot that you could do with that as a way to also push it, like, hey, do you want to play this in the festival? Are you apprehensive about how you might play it? Here's this solo mode to learn how to play it. Obviously, it comes with the demo problem. Like, if someone gets a free chance to try a thing and they don't like it, that means you're not converting a sale, you're not getting people to buy gems to get to the Labyrinth cards, but you're already kind of doing that anyway, because if you put, like if the inverse had happened where the Fiend event had happened, and then Labyrinth just fell flat on its face because there was a better Fiend and or Fairy archetype, no one would want it anyway. You're already throwing it into a competitive environment. You might as well make it so you can get the foot in the door, get them invested in some lower lower rarity ones, like giving them Kuklocks or Stovies for free, and then pill them on buying the set. But no, they decided Ally of Justice for some reason. If Ojama gets made, I'm going to scream. But something I never understood that they have, like, not at all leveraged is the anime. You've probably noticed this too. Yu-Gi-Oh! Games tend to fall into two different categories. Ones that venerate the anime as this huge cultural turning point that we've all latched ourselves onto, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Games that are, like, embarrassed to acknowledge it. Like, the card game itself, the TCG, the OCG, regular paper advanced Yu-Gi-Oh!, we are so lucky to get a single reference. The last time I think we had it was, like, in the Photon Hypernova, where they showed off Number Hunter again, and Number Hunter was a card that was released in, like, World Superstars as, like, a Kite reference, but isn't actually Kite, it's Number Hunter. We do have a few cards, like Unity and Yugioh Friendship, that have anime characters on them. Into the Frames is very clearly a Yusaku silhouette, but aside from that, it's just, like, in the peripheries references. Closest thing being, not Age of Overlord, Duelist Nexus, which has all the Signer Dragons, which don't have a connection outside of the anime itself. You have, like, Yusei's Duel Runner. And then there's, like, Ready Set Duel, which was in part of, like, an animation chronicle, which in and of itself is, like, more connected to the anime than others. In the broad strokes, the regular game does not want to be associated with the anime at all. But contrast that with some of Yu-Gi-Oh's faster-paced, more accessible formats. Speed Duels basically makes it so you have to acknowledge the anime every game, because if you're not playing with a skill, you're not playing very optimally. And then Duel Links is kind of the same way. You are literally playing as a character using some kind of skill. There's no way to ignore the fact that the anime exists and you are playing cards as an extension of those characters. But why are we dividing them at all? Why is competitive Yu-Gi-Oh!, or rather the one that might be seen as more competitive, the paper version, not incorporating the anime into more of its aesthetics? You could do this in solo mode. For instance, Rocket is a very prevalent monster archetype, maybe, you know, not by itself, but you see a lot of them in Dragon Link decks, and several people are fond of it. It's a fairly complex combo deck, getting or wrapping your head around the idea of blowing up your own monsters and using them as bullets that you fire out of your Link monsters, which are effectively your firearms, might not be easy to teach people. It is a very lateral thinking idea, which the mechanics, you know, show, but you can't just rely on mechanics being good and flavorful to actually teach people how to play the game. A solo mode would do nicely. The problem is, it has no lore, so how would you even talk about it? Well, you make the solo mode just like the anime. Make a Varus solo mode. Walk us through the individual points, the highlights of Vrains from Varus's perspective. You can have a lot of different matchups against Decode, against Salamangreat, against other things he presumably fought that aren't currently locked in the anime-only vaults. I think it would be a great draw. People who enjoy the anime would be all like, oh, I'm gonna play the Mako Tsunami solo mode, or the Hasselberry solo mode, just something. That way you can incorporate decks and deck archetypes that don't have some kind of overarching story, which you have otherwise kind of tied yourselves to, and then expand that roster to include a lot more things. You're almost kind of doing it with the SP challenges. A lot of those are based on things from the anime. Why are we not, like, advertising this as the Battle City track or the Friendship Cup track or something like that? Duel Links does this all the time with its events. The Duelist Chronicles are like a huge event that lets you, like, play through it. You get sections from the anime to play through as you progress on a board. Why is Master Duel so afraid to incorporate something that would energize a lot of anime fans? But you can add all the anime influences you want. All that really does is bring people in. One of the problems, I think, is keeping people there, and solo mode does not do a good job of it, because the mode kinda sucks. It really is just a series of missions using particular pre-made decks against particular other pre-made decks, and that's it. There's no replayability there. Once you're done with the solo mode, you're kind of done. True, there are dailies that reward you for playing solo modes, but it's a bore. Like, if you have everything cleared, all you're doing is going into solo mode, one-tricking it with the most powerful meta deck against the easiest grindable version of that mission, and you walk away with your 20 gems and wait till tomorrow. I mean, sure, it gets you something, and it gets people playing it, but I'm certainly not excited to do that, and I certainly don't think it's worth my time. How do we make it intrinsically more exciting? That is where we start stealing ideas. Specifically, from Legends of Runeterra. For those of you who don't know, that's the League of Legends card game. I first started playing it when it came out. I rocked a mean Twisted Fate Nautilus. I think that's the big submarine guy. That guy's deck, combining the fact that the deck wants to mill to get its deck as low as possible, with Twisted Fate's numerous draw cards to get us down there, all while providing a number of great utility effects. It was a lot of fun, and it's very well put together. And then I dropped it because a lot of my equipment didn't really function enough to play it. But recently I got back into it with a better phone, and I haven't put down their version of the solo mode since. It's called Path of Champions, I believe, and the idea is that you can unlock a champion, and that champion has a pre-made deck, which is starting to sound very familiar, and that champion has its own level. As you complete battles in different little mission tracks that they have access to, they gain experience, which upgrades their deck permanently. Some cards that were previously dog end up having a little minor stat boost that actually drastically increases their playability. It makes the card more fun to play. And then there's an overall experience total, which gives you other passive bonuses. Some things allow you to start with more money to spend on upgrades. Other things allow you to re-roll your random things you can buy. It adds these two different layers of progression, where as you're playing, you're still advancing no matter what, but you can pick specific champions that have playstyles that you like or want to experiment with something new, and the more time you put into that champion, the more rewards you get for their specific deck. Master Duel could do this. In Legends of Runeterra, while not all of them are like this, there are some character-specific ones that put them down a path that mimics something in their lore, in the game, or the comics, or any of that stuff. We have that. Whether it be anything from Duel Terminal, to the Abyss storyline, to World Legacy, there are so many worlds that we could make character-specific decks for. For instance, we already had the World Legacy gigantic solo mode. What if we replaced the boring single line that has a couple of branches with a map of the World Legacy world? We can see what it looks like. We can see where all the different places are in relationship to each other. And then you could progress from a starting point as Avram and then continue along. Maybe you start out with a World Legacy deck and you can slowly gain upgrades to not change the cards, because an important point is that the cards always do stay the same, but maybe you give them effects that allow them to act like future versions of those monsters. For instance, Ib, crowned by the World Chalice, is a pretty uneventful normal monster with a big defense stat who does work with the deck, but what if we gave them some kind of additional search effect later on while allowing them to maintain their normal typing? Some kind of inherent effect that we give the card, like how Yang Zings gives stuff to their synchro monsters. I think it would add a cool level of playability and replayability to see how the deck evolves over time. Heck, you could do that with Ally of Justice. Make Catastor the champion of the deck, and then as you continue through your battle against the worm threats, the individual Ally of Justice monsters, which are maligned for how crummy they are, start taking on traits from the other tribes that made them. Maybe they inherit some of the radical synchro capabilities of the X-Sabers, or they gain piercing damage, like with Urukwazos on certain monsters. Ice barriers, I'm sure, will contribute something. Maybe they can actually get the Medallion Searcher on some kind of card. Just anything to make it more exciting. And then you can make sure you contextualize it in that particular slice of the dual terminal storyline. The enemies that you fight along the way are different worms, and those decks will not only be specific to that worm, but might also come with their own little rule sets. Another thing in Legends of Runeterra are powers, which are passive things that not only you can accumulate, which work during that adventure path only, but also enemies have a particular passive that buffs them in a particular way that gives them not only an advantage, but more flavor. Like, imagine if you fought Worm Carteros, and its ability was that anytime a worm flipped, they got to search another one. So there was like this literal unending swarm of worms. They'd never run out of resources. You'd have to find other ways to get rid of them so that they would stop getting more cards. You'd have to lean on Ally of Justices that deal with set monsters without flipping them. It would add a lot of flavor and context to how these cards all intermingle. Now, after all of that, you might be asking, Nova, why are you even making this video? It's not like you have a seat at the Master Duel design table, and that's true. But I was reminded recently that Konami did have a big shareholder meeting, and one of the issues that was brought up was Yu-Gi-Oh's lack of accessibility. So, you know, maybe a little bird lands on someone's shoulders and it shares maybe one or two of the ideas that I shared here in this video, and it maybe improves Master Duel a little bit. I stand by the fact that solo mode is easily one of the best tools that Konami and Yu-Gi-Oh as a whole has had for teaching the player base a ton of things. Being a way to share lore in a comprehensive way. Being a way to tutorialize not just the base game itself, but get people up to date on some of the more advanced tactics of the game. And of course, connecting people in a way that makes the game fun by giving us multiple formats, so we're not just loading into casual matches or ladder and being stomped by a deck we've never seen before. Maybe keeping festivals around for longer than a couple of weeks so that you can play a particular format as the card pool evolves and isn't just used as a way to farm engagement for certain packs. I don't know. There's a lot of potential here, and on the off chance that maybe either someone in charge hears it, or these ideas get shared around so someone eventually does hear about it, it would be nice to see this game that we all love get a little better. But that's all I have to say here. Now I want to hear what your thoughts are. How do you think that Master Duel solo mode can be improved? Or really, how can Master Duel be improved in general? Note, I will not be accepting any answers that say, let us dust the legacy pack pulls. Trust me, we all know that one. That's a gimme. Share your ideas in the comments, as well as letting me know what you thought of this format. I haven't really done this whole semi-off-the-cuff video, and I don't know, it's kind of fun to put together. So let me know if you liked it, your critiques, really anything you want to share about this format. And of course, if you could share this with someone you think would enjoy this kind of video, it really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you in part by Dragon Shield. When you want to protect your cards with the power of dragon scales, get some sweet lore for them, and support the channel, check out my link in the description to get started. Today's episode was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including the illustrious Quasar Commander Green Knight, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Andrew Newman, A Random Pup, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Clockswork, Danny Bound, Eric, Aaron the World Breaker, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iskander 711, John, Julius Sneezer, Mana Charge, Marluxia Zagirl, Molly Renata, Nathan Vig, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Sir Knight JCB, Skybuster Leo, Sophie, apparently, The Wizard Moose and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Almento 5010, Ariel Kersey, Beluga Masta, Blue Gem, Callum McCann, Chaz Ghost, Corbynisms, Drachenwald, Drake and SpongeBob be like, you used to call me on your shell phone, Eki Bullock, Emily, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Inblink, Jester Designs, Kale the Dragon, Carp, Kevon Public, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lemon Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-De-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Matt Simmons, Mega Combi, Michael Shimabukuro, Nadia McCarthy, Nitromo, Ruxith Sarani, Shizuka Nijimura, Star-Lord 777, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, Tucker Ordorn, Venusian Teapot, and Zaldreka, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to be a part of these credits, help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, and participate in the monthly custom card reviews, I would be eternally grateful if you checked out my Patreon in the description or joined up as a YouTube member.